Hello, welcome back to Microsoft Server Administration 2. My name is Nick. The topic of the video is secondary DNS zones. So, a quick rundown here. I have my primary server, which is a domain controller and a DNS server for the Contasso.com domain. I have my primary or Active Directory integrated zone, actually, for Contasso.com in DNS, hosting all of the resource records here in DNS. And I want to be able to take my clients here in the Chicago site and be able for them to contact this Chicago domain controller for DNS name resolution, because currently at this point any clients that are in this site, when they have to issue a DNS query of some sort, they have to traverse the LANs here, the network, over into the headquarters network and have DNS names resolved here, and that answer has to come back across the router, and they will be able to use the answer to get the information they need. Well, that's a lot of unnecessary network traffic that we don't need. So my solution to that is to place a secondary DNS zone on Chicago-DC1, and that way the clients can use Chicago DC1 to resolve DNS queries. Now, a secondary DNS zone is still what we call authoritative for the zone. That means it can make decisions, and it can be kind of a server out there being an authority for the Contasso.com DNS domain. Now, what you cannot do with a secondary DNS zone is you cannot create, remove resource records. It is simply a copy of the existing DNS zone that it pulls from this parent server over here, HQDC1. So I am going to install a secondary DNS zone. So how do we do that? Well, DNS, once again, is simply a role that we install on the server. I'm going to close that and let Server Manager pop up. There it is. And click on my roles node, and I'm going to add a role. And next on that, we're going to choose a DNS server role. Next, through all of that, that simply installs the role. Now, I'm going to let that go through its thing, and after the role is installed, we are going to be able to set up the secondary zone. The installation succeeded, and get that going there. I am going to open the DNS console now that it's installed, Administrative Tools, and DNS. There it is. And of course, we can expand DNS, expand our server name, which is Chicago DC1. Look at our forward lookup zones, and we currently have none configured. So I am going to right click on forward lookup zones and create a new zone. So next on that, we can choose from one of the three types: primary, secondary, or stub. We know what a primary zone is. It is the authoritative zone for a network, much like what this over here is. A secondary zone creates a copy of what's on the primary server. It remains authoritative, but you cannot change the information. And a stub zone simply has a reference to the authoritative zones in a network. So secondary zone, next on that, and the zone name we're going to create here, we're going to have to use the existing DNS zone name, which is Contasso.com. And next on that, and it wants to know where am I copying the information from. Well, I have to know the server that holds the DNS zone currently. That is HQ-DC1, and I should be able to resolve that using DNS. HQ-DC1. We're just going to press enter, and it was able to resolve both the IP version 4 and the IP version 6 of that address. So next on that, and there's our summary. We're going to finish, and there we go. Now at this point, zone not loaded by DNS server. So what this is telling us is that either it's not finished copying the zone information from the parent, or something is not configured to allow us to copy that zone information. What on earth do I mean by that? Well, let's go to our primary server over here for contasso.com and look at the properties. The act of copying zone information from one server to the other is called a zone transfer. So we want to look at our zone transfer tab, and by default this box is unchecked, allow zone transfers. By default our DNS server will not allow zone transfers, so it will not allow any other DNS server to copy information from this zone to another DNS server. So we want to allow zone transfers for our network. Now, allowing zone transfers to any server can be a bit dangerous. We don't want to do that unless we absolutely have to. The setting I like to use is either only to servers listed in our name servers tab, which we'll go over that in a few minutes, or only to the following servers. So we can just make a manual list of servers here to allow the copying of that zone information to. So I'm going to choose the only to servers listed in the name servers tab and look at the name servers tab here, and I have hq-dc1.contasso.com. That is the only DNS server this zone knows about at this point. So I'm going to have to add my DNS server's name into the name servers tab in our existing DNS zone. So Chicago-DC1 is my new DNS server. So I want to make sure our DNS zone knows about my new DNS server. So I'm going to add him to the name servers tab. So fully qualified domain name of the new server, and we are going to Chicago-DC1.contasso.com. I'm going to press the resolve button there. The server with this IP address is not authoritative for the required zone, not yet anyway. So we're going to press OK on that, and it resolved to the correct IP address, and so far we're okay. And we're going to lock that in there, and this might take just a few minutes to kind of everything take effect and propagate across our network and things like that. But as soon as all this stuff converges and all the changes to my zone have taken effect, I should see, when I go in and refresh my screen here, I should see my zone data start to populate in this zone. So I'm going to give this just a few minutes. Okay, I have given it a few minutes and refreshed one more time, and there is my zone data that has populated now in my secondary server. Now, in the event this did not populate, what I would try to do at least is force a transfer of the zone data from the master server. So I can right click on my zone and say transfer from master and force this DNS server to ask for a zone transfer, ask for that information to be transferred to it. So not terribly difficult to add a secondary DNS zone to a network. So once again, this is what we're looking like. We now have a secondary DNS zone installed on our Chicago domain controller, so clients over here don't have to traverse the network to resolve names to IP addresses. So as always, if there are any questions about any of this, please just send me an email, Blackboard or Pulaski Tech, or bring your questions to class. I always love having questions in class. It means you want to learn. So we will discuss your questions in class if you choose to do that. So I will see you in class, and thank you for watching.